Hello, everybody. My name is Jafari, and today I'm going to be decoding an advertisement. And just to kind of give you guys a rundown of how this is going to work, I'm going to start off by deconstructing the ad, talking about what I see, what color choices are used, what is sticking out to me, what does this say, and what is everything that I can take from face value. I'm just giving you guys everything that I see exactly. Then I'm going to analyze it, talk about why were these design choices used, what is this trying to communicate to me, and how does this allow me to identify myself as a person? How do I form identity based on what this ad is trying to push and what this ad is telling me and how it's telling me that? And then I'm going to kind of relate these topics to the Williamson reading, just to kind of bridge the gaps. So to start off, I chose the McDonald's ad that says, "Stop staring at me like I'm some piece of meat." The forefront of this piece is the burger. So the burger is at the bottom half of the screen, but it takes up majority of the space. It is the center attraction, and it has the light reflecting off of it. It's neatly shaped, beautiful. The grease is glistening in the light, and it's placed on what it seems like a bed, and there's this very velvety, like red, silky background. There's, curtains, and that's basically it. The text is obviously at the top. It's basically a quote of what the burger is saying, personifying the burger, but we're going to get into that in a little bit. But what is this ad trying to tell us? Well, this ad is really kind of drawing a connection between lust and hunger through the use of this background, red, silky sheets, silky pillows, curtains, anything that's satin like that. It is basically touching on romance. This is a representation of romance, lust, sexual drive. We are basically looking at this burger, like it says, as a piece of meat, even though it is. We are objectifying this burger, and it's more from a predacious context, as this is trying to communicate. This is, if we were to draw a connection in real life, this is basically a similar way in which women are objectified by men. Women are looked at as this center of attention, this sexual object that men see and they kind of drool over. There's this hunger, there's this temptation, there's this lust, and there's a promiscuity that's there. And this is kind of touching on that through the use of this scenery with the pillows, the bed. This is basically telling you someone's about to get undressed. So that's a very interesting thing to take away. The use of red, love, romance is very predominant throughout the piece. And just the way that the burger is presented, it looks like they're sitting at a photo shoot. The burger ought to be wearing lingerie at this point. But I'm going to kind of touch on some of Williamson's takes and some quotes from her book about this, because I think it helps us kind of understand how we identify ourselves. Because if I were a woman watching this, I would probably feel as though I am being represented in a sexual way, in a promiscuous way, in a way that's that objectifies myself, but at the same time in a way that men objectify me, and men look at me as an object of lust, as something that is temptation. The idea of the male gaze, and kind of just featuring women as just this piece of whatever that they can just have whenever they want. This is kind of what it reminds me of. And, Williamson states, she says, conversely, there are the ads where people become identified with objects. And in this piece, the burger represents women. And it could work vice versa. Men can be sought after, women can be predacious just as much as men can. But, typically in our society, it is normal. It's this hegemonic idea that women are typically the prey and men are the predators, as weird as that sounds. The sign, Williamson says the sign consists of the signifier and the signified. So in this, the sign the signifier would be the burger, the object. This is what the commercial is using as the symbolism. This is the object that is being personified. And then the signified is the meaning. Well, women are being represented through this piece. This is in a way, it can be a victim. In a way, it can just be a super promiscuous woman. But it's this idea that, this commercial is trying to draw this connection between hunger and lust. These are both innate impulses, something that you really cannot always, well, you can, but to a degree, sometimes to some, it feels like you cannot control these impulses. So I think it does a great job of kind of forming that connection and kind of personifying it and symbolizing it in this way. And it kind of makes you want to drool over the burger. It makes you want to kind of go and grab the burger and, not to sound weird, but, just to kind of put my foot in the other shoe here. And lastly, she says that advertising sets up connections between certain types of consumers and certain products. Women, they look at this and they're like, do I see myself as this center of attraction that's being groveled over, or am I just a woman? It definitely has a lot of takeaways.